Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. I'm going to start a two-part video. Part one will deal with this particular locomotive. It's a 060 made by Bachmann. In this part one, we will go ahead and deal with how to take this locomotive apart. And it's a little bit more involved than just taking a couple of screws out, because we do have to separate the cab from the locomotive body itself. And we'll get into the whys of that in a minute. And then in part two of the video, I'll show you how I'm going to put a decoder, a keep alive, and a speaker somewhere in this little locomotive. And it won't be in the cab, okay? We're going to keep the cab clean so that, we don't see those components sticking out. First, I want to remind my UK viewers once again that I will be attending the Worley National Railway Exhibition in Birmingham on November 26th and 27th. So if you're there, look me up. I'll be at the DCC concept stand part of the time, and a lot of the time I'll just be wandering around the aisles looking for new products, things to buy. So if you see me in the aisles, feel free to come on up, introduce yourself, and let's talk for a few minutes. So what I want to do now is go ahead. If you're only interested in how to install the decoder and other components, then you can skip ahead. If you're interested in finding a little bit more about these little locomotives, then let's go ahead and take a look at this particular one and get started. Okay, I've gone ahead and zoomed in on this little collection of British prototype locomotives. These are all 060s. They represent different time periods. Okay, so the one labeled Great Western represents the time period up till about 1934. And then after 1934, they stopped using the Great Western, and they went to this little emblem here on the side. It's the Great Western Railway initials in a very small 12-inch diameter. It's called a shirt button logo or herald. That was used until 1942. Then in 1942, they went to a much more high visibility GWR that lasted until 1948, when the railroads were nationalized and put into British Rail ownership. So let's go ahead and take a look at what it takes to get this apart. Okay, I've got the locomotive in a foam cradle to protect it while we do this, and flipped it on its back so we can work on it. Now the first part in this is getting a couple of screws out that hold it in, and it's hidden under this coupler here. So let's pop those little coupler holders out, these neem couplers, and as you can see, I'm a KD user, so there are those. Okay, so you'll see right here at each end of the locomotive, there is a screw. So we just take a small Phillips head screwdriver, and we'll pull that out of there. I'm going to set these in the cradle here. Hopefully I won't lose them. Okay. So we'll get both of those out. And at this point, the locomotive just comes right apart, like so. Here's what we have to work with then. I'm going to put the locomotive chassis and the like aside, because we want to go ahead in this part of the video with getting the cab off of the locomotive. And I'll show you why here in a minute, because we need to get into here. Now, the first thing we also need to do is remove these two screws. These screws hold a weight inside the cab in place. So we want to get those out so we can free up the bottom of the cab as well. So I got two more screws to take care of here. Okay, so now that we've got those screws out, the cab should be pretty free to come out. Now, let me show you a couple of things you have to do first, though. You'll note here we have this stanchion and handrail here on the side. So you've got to relieve the pressure on that. So what I do is just take a screwdriver and put it in up here at the front and just pull that out gently. And that will pull this handrail out of that stanchion so that when you pull the cab off, you're not going to break your stanchion or your handrail. And don't do that because it's expensive to get these replaced. I had to call Bachmann in England and have them send me some. They don't stock these, and if you break one, they have to try to find an old shell that has some that they can scavenge them from. Okay, now, if you look inside here, there is a line between the cab here and the shell. And what you basically have to do is put a screwdriver in here and give it a little twist, both sides. And if you're real lucky and the assembler in China was not doing their job that day, they didn't put much glue in here. Now, I have had these come right apart without any problem. I have had some of these that I really had to work at separating the glue line. And typically what you'll find is right up here at the front of the cab, right here between the front of the cab and the boiler here, there's a little space, and you can put a number 17 X-Acto knife blade down in here and just kind of gently pry it apart. And you can see here it's starting to come apart for me. Okay, so I'm going to ease that, and it's apart. So that's the first part, getting that guy out. Now you also, so that you won't break it, and also to gain access to what I want to get to, you need to remove this lever here, and that came out fairly easily. Somebody didn't do a very good job of gluing at the factory that day. Now the thing that we want to get to, though, is right in here. And let me show you. What they've done is they've used the tanks on each side of the boiler as a place to put a weight. So if you reach down in here at the front of the cab and push, you can extract this boiler weight. Now, I have had these that are loose and will slide out just like this one just did. I've had them where they've used some kind of sticky tape in there to hold it in place. But you just slide that out like that. And you can see what you've got. You've got a U-shaped weight that fits right inside and all the way up to the smoke box front. Okay, so once you've got that out, this is the important part. You have tons of space in here for the components. Okay, so let me show you. This is my decoder that I'm going to be using. It's a Soundtrax Economy decoder with a UK prototype sound package. And it'll fit right in this little area down in here, like that. And the same goes for this is a TCS Keep Alive, and it will fit down in here, like so. Okay. And this is a TCS Sugar Cube speaker. And as you can see, it too will fit down in here. So there's lots of room if you go to the effort to find it. So now we have space in here for the decoder, the Keep Alive, and a speaker all down in there, and we can still get the chassis in. The next step then is preparing the locomotive for installing the decoder. And what I do then is to make room and to preserve some weight, I'm going to go ahead and chop this off here. And I've already got another one that I've already done. This is a 6400 class. And you can see, if you look down in here, I think I can get it. Yeah, there you go. You can see where I've cut off the end of this U-shaped weight and installed it back in here. Okay, so that gives me some weight up front. Then the rest of it, I have these two pieces of leftover weight that I can use. Okay, so what I've done here is I took the weight out to my garden, and using a Dremel tool, I've already cut through about halfway through on each side of the weight here. And I found that that's all it takes. You don't have to cut all the way through. These things, they do get hot as you're cutting them, so having some cold water around, a hose, which is why I did it out in my garden. And as soon as it got hot, I turned the hose on and blasted it. And so that cools it off fairly well. And then you can go ahead and grasp it with your pliers and just give it a pull. And usually that is enough to break it loose. Okay, so in this particular case, the right-hand red pickup is on the left side and vice versa. So always check. Make sure that you've got things properly set up. Don't assume that the Chinese are following any wiring convention when they put these things together, because they don't, as you can see. Now, here you can see that we do have the two wire leads. I've checked. This one is the positive and this is the negative lead. So at least we got that much. And the easy way to check this is to get yourself a 9-volt battery and just touch it to the wires. And if the wheels go forward, then you know which way you've got it set up based on the polarity of the contacts on the battery itself. So that'll tell you right off how to wire this up. Okay, so the first thing I want to do then, now that we've got the weight carved down and we're ready to reinstall things. So to hold the weight in place, I'm going to use a piece of 3M double-sided tape. You can see it right here, good old Scotch double-sided tape. And I'm going to put a little bit on the back side of the weight itself and drop it into place in the front of the boiler casting, just behind that smoke box door. So let me ease it into place here carefully so I don't break anything. Okay, there they are. Okay, so see if I can show you that. It's tucked down in there, out of the way, and we've got that amount of weight back in the front end of the locomotive at least. Okay, so now we're ready to go ahead and prepare the decoder and everything else to go in here. So let me show you that. So here we are with a locomotive shell, and the weight has been installed back up in the front here. So let's go ahead. What I want to do first is make some measurements. I'm going to set this up. Now what I'm using is a Soundtrax Economy decoder. It's the UK Steam version, and they just happen to have a GWR 262 locomotive recording on here. So it's got the appropriate whistles and other sounds, and I have listened to tons of the videos, or watched tons of videos of the South Devon Heritage Railway and also on the Severn Valley Heritage Railway with locomotives like these operating. And to be honest with you, I can't tell the difference between an 060 and a 262. And the important thing is, I can get an economy decoder here in the States for about half of what it would cost me to get a Loc-Sound decoder or a Zemo decoder from one of the British DCC suppliers that is appropriate for the exact locomotive. So, this one was about $65. It would cost me probably $150 almost to get the British produced version once I take into account the exchange rate and shipping and everything. So it's economically sound. I'm perfectly happy with it. They sound the same to me. It's up to you to check it out yourself. And you can still get these easily in the UK. What I want to do is make some measurements here. I'm going to set this up so that I've got my speaker wires up front running to the speaker. Okay, and for the speaker, I'm going to be using this TCS Sugar Cube speaker. I'm sure you can find a similar one that will fit, and you can buy these directly from TCS on their website. So I just need to make the measurements here and here so that I get a good fit across the face of the locomotive, okay, once I install these. And then the other thing that I'm going to use is this TCS KA1. So you can see this KA1, this is a keep alive. It's, about as long, almost as long as the decoder, but somewhat smaller. And on these, the two wires that you need are the blue wire and the green and yellow wire on the economy. So on these, what we're going to want to do, we will connect the blue wire to the blue wire and the green and yellow wire on the decoder to the black and white wire on the keep alive. So I'm going to measure these all out and make the connections and do the soldering off the video because it will take a long time for me to do this on the video. And it'll take a much shorter time if I can just do it on the workbench. Okay, as you can see here, I've gone ahead and soldered the economy decoder, the keep alive, and the speaker together. So now I'm going to start inserting them into the cavity here within the boiler. So I'm going to start with the decoder itself, and we're going to slide it down in here and right into place. Now what I've done, forgot to mention, I went ahead and installed another piece of that double stick 3M tape on the backside of each one of these components. So when they slide into the cavity there, they're going to be stuck in place. So now let's go ahead and we'll do the speaker. I added a second layer of tape to the speaker. So let's see how that goes in there this time. Much easier. That's good. So the last thing we have to put into place here is the keep alive. So let's go ahead and let me get some other wires out of the way so I can space it properly. Okay. Now, so I'm just going to have it tucked right in there out of the way as well. Okay. Now, what we have left are the orange, red, black, and gray wires to be installed. Okay, so you can see we've got everything installed now. We've got the decoder, we have the speaker, and then right behind that we have the TCS Keep Alive. So that's going to prevent any dirty track or dead spots on those Pico insel frogs from stalling our locomotive. So what I've got to do next, I'm going to take this back over to my workbench and I'm going to make the connections between the track pickups and everything else on the chassis that needs to be done, because I've got the red and the black go to the track pickups, the gray and the orange, of course, go to the motor leads, and that's it. And the rest gets tucked out of the way on top of the motor itself so that we don't have anything getting pulled down into the gears. So let me go ahead and do that. So now you can see we've got everything hooked up carefully here. Decoder, speaker, keep alive down here. Got all my little wires tucked away. They're going to be tucked up further back up this way once I install it. And then the motor connections and the pickup connections. Remember, these things are reversed. So let me go ahead. The eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed that I've now switched to a different chassis. So this is a 2-for-1 installation. This is a 6400 series locomotive. The other one was, I believe, a 5700 that I was working with. They're identical for all intents and purposes. And I just switched because I already had this chassis set up and ready to go. So made it a little bit faster along the way. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop it together, and I'm going to do that on the workbench because it's a little bit fiddly trying to get these wires in here. And once I get it in, I'll show you how to put it all back together, and we'll be off and running. Okay, here's the locomotive. I've already put it back together. I put the cut down pieces of the weights back into the remainder of the space on the tank, and we came out pretty close to the original weight. So that's pretty good. So I also have gone ahead and I placed it on the programming track and checked it to make sure, that there weren't any shorts, and I reprogrammed the address. So I'm going to put the couplers on it right here, and let me get this one. Okay, so that's ready to go on the track. So let me go ahead now. I'll put it on the track and we'll get set up to do a sound test for you. that pretty much wraps up this installation video on how to install sound and DCC and a speaker and keep alive and everything in this little locomotive. And it runs beautifully. I was really surprised when I put the decoder in here and got it running, how well it does operate and the nice sound that you get out. The next time you're looking at some small locomotive to use for your switching operations on your layout, don't overlook the fact that you can probably install a sound decoder, a keep alive, and a speaker all in some hidden place in a small locomotive like this. Where there's a will, there's a way, so give it a try, guys.